Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking part in this live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. Over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the issues he is working on in Washington, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you'd like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you'd like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. Again, we want to welcome everybody joining us. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And with that, we're going to turn it over to the Congressman for some opening remarks.
Thanks, Josh, and thank everyone for taking the time to join us this evening. If a few of you have called in last evening, do apologize. We had to cancel that due to high winds in Colorado, as many of you know. And got in late here to D.C. Last night, but did want to make sure that had this opportunity to be able to visit with you and look forward to your questions. We do have a variety of pieces of legislation that we are putting forward for our district, the Protecting Our Water Rights Act, Healthy Forest Management and Wildfire Act, to be able to make sure that regulations for our small community banks are appropriate, and a variety of other pieces as well that we can certainly talk about during questions that you might have, but do again appreciate all of you taking time tonight and look forward to your questions.
For those of you just joining us, this is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton, and over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the issues he is working on in Washington, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. Again, please press 0 on your phone keypad if you would like to ask a question at any time. And while we wait for that to populate, we're going to start with a question we've heard a number of times this week into the office, and that is, why is Congress currently using the Congressional Review Act so much, and what is that?
Well, thanks, Josh. And I know we've had a number of questions on the Congressional Review Act. Often on the media, we'll hear it referred to as a CRA. This is a role I think is very appropriate. In the state of Colorado, we have sunset legislation. Our legislature has a role to be able to play when it comes to rules and regulations that are being put out by the bureaucracy. Unfortunately for Congress, currently we saw a situation where rules and regulations, once they became final, it took the proverbial act of Congress to be able to adjust or remove something that no member of the House or Senate, Republican or Democrat, had ever voted on. Under the Congressional Review Act, this gives Congress an opportunity to be able to step in to that regulatory process. When we've seen overreaches, we've had 70,000 pages now in the Federal Register. We had 4,000 new regulations that were proposed in the last year of the last administration, and 200 of those were economically significant. So a very appropriate role for both parties to be able to use when it comes to actually getting Congress back into that rulemaking authority.
And we want to thank everybody who is currently joining us. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And over the course of the call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the issues he is working on in Washington, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press 0 on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic updates via email from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. With that, we're going to go to Jenna in Telluride for our first question.
Hi, Jenna. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, is this Scott Tipton?
It
who
is.
I'm speaking with? Hi,
How are you
Scott.
doing, Jenna?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. I have a couple of questions for you. I do receive your email, and I am just trying to understand why it is that you think that it is a win for the West that the waters of the United States is under fire by the Trump administration, and how that possibly could be a win for the West when the protection of our waterways is of utmost importance to most of your constituents, I would imagine.
Sure. The reason this is actually a win for us, Jenna, is as you probably recognize as a Coloradoan, I grew up there as maybe you did as well. State law when it comes to water has always been respected by the federal government. In the West, water is a private property right. Our priority-based systems are based off of that water law. What we saw was the EPA in an overreach beyond the authority that was granted by Congress when we were talking about the Clean Water Act, was then going to start basically regulating every ditch, every puddle of rainwater that came. As you well know, in the western part of Colorado where we live, we have draws that may not have a drop of water run down it until there is rainfall. Well, that water coming down off of the rainfall was going to be able to be regulated by the federal government. In fact, if you actually look through some of the original WOTUS language, that when it came out, dirt was going to be labeled as a pollutant that was coming through. It was complete overreach that we saw that was going to be undermining, again, state water law, which has always been respected by the federal government, our priority-based systems, and private property rights as well. We have great regulatory processes in Colorado. We share in common the desire to make sure that we have that clean water, but this was an overreach by the EPA.
And for those of you just joining us, this is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And over the course of the call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the issues he is working on in Washington, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you'd like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. For our next question, we're going to go to Grand Junction to Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi. I am calling about the Affordable Care Act. I work at St. Mary's in Grand Junction and have for a long time. I've been in healthcare. We depend a great deal on Medicaid reimbursement. Before that, there were a large number of self-pay patients, and I would like to know what your stance is on Medicaid.
You bet. Thank you, and I appreciate that question, Deborah. Medicaid obviously has an important role to play, as you're well aware, primarily designed for women, for children, for some people with some disabilities, the blind, to be able to deal with that. We'd expanded that in Colorado. Have visited actually with physicians at St. Mary's and physicians throughout the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado, and particularly private practice doctors right now who are refusing to take Medicaid patients simply because of the reimbursements. Do believe that Medicaid does play an important role for some of the underprivileged and some of those needs that we do have. Those are some of the challenges that I think we do need to recognize. In our state of Colorado, with the expansion, we've seen a lot of those costs going up. 29% more in terms of costs from the original estimates of $1.6 billion in spending for the first 2 years of the expansion. Now we're seeing those real increases that are coming up. Enrollment have popped up significantly on that as well, which is driving about now well over 20-some-odd% of the state budget of Colorado. When it comes to some of those costs that are being incurred that we need to be taking a look at. I think a work requirement in terms of able-bodied people is certainly something that's going to be appropriate to be able to address. But do not underestimate the value, certainly, of Medicaid because you've seen some of the compassion and the need that is certainly there.
And we want to thank everybody who is just joining us. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. Over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the issues he is working on in Washington, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you'd like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. For our next call, we're going to go to Bob in Pueblo.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, my name's Bob. I live in Pueblo. I'm a lifelong resident of Colorado. I'm a hunter, fisherman, hiker, camper. I have major concerns about your stance on public lands and the transfer. I think that you're overlooking the needs of everybody in Colorado for a few special interests. They're already drilling, fracking, logging, mining on these lands, and I feel very strongly that you should leave the federal lands alone. Those are our lands, and everybody in Colorado benefits from those. And I want to know your stance as to why you think that those public lands should go and be transferred and sold, and who's paying you for that.
Great. Well, Bob, while I've got you on the line, what lands have I ever said I wanted to transfer? And I think that's the answer. There are no lands that I've ever suggested that we transfer. Have advocated and will continue to advocate for something that you noted was important, the ability to be able to have access to those public lands for our hunters, for our anglers, for our snowmobilers, for people to be able to hunt and hike on those public lands. But I've heard that allegation, but as I noted during the campaign, simply untrue. We've advocated for our public lands. We've not advocated for those lands to be transferred, but we do believe that we've got to make sure that those lands do have access for Americans and for you to be able to go out, as you described, and to be able to enjoy, and we're going to continue to fight on your behalf to do just that.
And we want to thank everybody who is just joining us. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Tipton. And we want to thank everybody who is waiting to currently ask a question. We're going to try to get through as many of these as possible within the hour time frame. If you would like to ask a question of Congressman Tipton or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up for the free e-newsletter at www.tipton.house.gov. And with that, we're going to go to Patrick in Fruita.
Hi, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for joining.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
No problem. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you having a town hall. I know this is something that a lot of people aren't doing, and I appreciate the transparency on your part. Listen, I'm a lifelong Republican, but I'm deeply troubled by the embarrassing situation on the part of the Trump administration. I look at the history of our country, and I consider figures like Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and all the presidents, and then I look at the situation currently, and I have to tell you, I'm deeply embarrassed by the blatant and bald-faced lying and the lack of transparency, and coupled with the fact that it seems as though there's a deep lack of acknowledging some of the things that are going on. I'd like to know what your thoughts are. I mean, I'm not going to mention the oligarchy and the cabinet loaded with billionaire business interests and the chance of lock her up when it appears that Vice President Pence did almost the same thing and nobody turned a mumbling eye towards him. I'd like to know, what's the situation with the ties to Russia? I was walking over to City Market in Fruita the other day, and I saw a bumper sticker, and it said, "Are you tired of hope and change yet?" And there was a hammer and a sickle on the bumper sticker, and it was an obvious reference to President Obama's hope and change slogan. And it seems to me like we've got about 5 people in that administration that have not only said they didn't meet with the Russians, but they obviously did. And I'd like to know, are you going to support an investigation, an independent investigation into that situation so we can find out exactly what's going on and why there's such a close tie between our administration and a country that's run by a killer?
Patrick, I appreciate you joining us this evening, and I think we do have our House committee, and I believe on the Senate side as well with their Intelligence Committee, are currently conducting investigations. We'd had some conversations when I was in Paonia just a week ago at a town hall in regards to an independent investigator, independent counsel to be able to investigate, and talked to a number of people on that, and they decided that it takes effectively 2 years. This is just over past history under Republican and Democrat administrations for those to actually get up and running. I have a lot of faith in Devin Nunes on the Intelligence Committee on the House side and on the Senate side as well. The original arguments were going into the Russians playing into our elections. This is something that every American is opposed to, and we need to be able to get to the bottom of. If it expands beyond that, that's certainly in the purview not only of the Intelligence Committees, but also I think Jason Chaffetz in the Oversight Committee as well has indicated that he's going to be conducting oversight hearings as well to be able to make it. And I do think it is also important to note, while there is certainly pause for concern in some areas in the minds of many people, none of these allegations to date have actually been substantiated. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking into what was going on, what comments were made, to whom and when, and the appropriateness of that. So we do share that common idea, I believe, in terms of making sure that we're looking out for this country and making sure that our elections are fair and we aren't getting manipulation from outside influences. So I appreciate your coming into the town hall here, Patrick.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for this live Teletown Hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And if you are just joining us, if you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. With that, we're going to go to George in Pueblo for our next question.
Hi, George.
Congressman, this is George Mayfield in Pueblo. I've sent you a couple of emails recently about the efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare, but I wanted to express my concern about the House leadership's current bill and plan, mostly because I have a feeling that there's so much trouble getting it approved by Republicans that we may lose the opportunity this year to repeal the thing. But I wanted to know your stance, your thoughts about that current effort.
Yeah, obviously embrace, and here's kind of the common ground, George, and I think you and I, and probably I believe everybody on this call can agree. When it comes to health care, every American would like to be able to have affordability and accessibility. Here are the real impacts that came into our district. For those of us who live in rural Colorado, we pay more than our urban counterparts. If you bought the Bronze Plan under the Affordable Care Act and you lived in rural Colorado, you paid more for the identical plan than somebody sitting in Denver, Colorado. We saw double-digit increases in terms of premiums, high copays. One lady I talked to in Ridgeway not long ago was paying more for her insurance policy than she is for her mortgage payment, and still has a $6,000 deductible. Her comment to me was, I may have insurance, but I can't afford it, and I really don't have real health care because I can't afford it with a high deductible. So those are some of the common ground. We also share, I think, real empathy for anybody that has pre-existing condition. And so legislation that we currently have that's being marked up right now in the Ways and Means Committee and in the Energy and Commerce Committee, we'll be addressing some of those to be able, and those are certainly going to be my standard points. We need to be able to make sure that we're moving to affordability. Is it going to be a light switch with the insurance companies? Maybe not, but it's simply unsustainable for people. I am basically pro-repeal of the ACA, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to vote for just any replacement bill. We need to make sure that we are having some of the standards that I think we have heard out of our constituents to make sure that we are achieving that affordability and the accessibility as well.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. If you are just joining us, this is a live Teletown Hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the issues he is working on in Washington, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. And for our next question, we're going to go to Joanne in Alamosa.
Hi, Joanne. How are you?
Hi. My name's actually Julia.
Julia?
I had some,
okay.
Yeah. I had some questions about oil and gas drilling, specifically methane gas drilling in the southern part of Colorado. And I wanted to know, how do you feel about increasing and stabilizing the EPA regulations as far as controlling the seeps and the methane seeps that we have in that area? A lot of these wells aren't properly capped, or they've been abandoned, and now the methane gas is seeping into the environment. I'm sure, as you know, as an educated man, that methane is a powerful greenhouse gas, and it is affecting our future. In 2014, there were some regulations that were helping the gas companies go and fix these. Are you going to make sure that they continue to do that? And are you going to make sure that they continue to regulate the water that they are both putting into their fracking wells and that they are taking out of their fracking wells?
Julia, you and I share, as I believe every Coloradoan does, that we want to make sure that we're protecting our air and water. The EPA actually came out with a study showing that in the United States, our methane emissions had actually dropped, I think it was 5.5%. Colorado happens to have been held up, as I know you're probably aware, as actual real leader when it comes to good oil and gas regulation at the state level. And given with some of the different geologies that have to be dealt with, I think those are some good templates to be able to work off of. If you have some issues in southern Colorado in terms of some of the leaks that you were describing, if you get those to our office, those are some things that we can certainly inquire about because we do have good standards that are in place that we want to make sure are enforced. And I'm going to be with you when it comes to being able to protecting our water. And we've got a good track record of that, by the way, that I'm sure you're probably aware of. We'd had Secretary Jewell before committee as Secretary of the Department of Interior. And with the same concern that you have, I'd asked her the question in terms of some of the fracking operations that had gone on, how many times had we gotten into the water table? And Secretary Jewell's response was 0. So we want to make sure that we keep that record, that we're doing it responsibly and have the appropriate measures in place to responsibly develop our resources, not only for energy and for the efficiencies, but also for the public health and safety as well. So I appreciate your question and your concern, Julia.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for this live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Tipton. Just as a reminder, if you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. For our next question, we're going to go to Jack in Montrose.
Hi, Jack.
Hey, Senator Tipton, thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
First off, I think a lot of these callers that are professing to be Republicans and stuff are not being truthful. But anyway, my question is I think there was a lot of overreach by the previous administration, especially in taking lands for federal purposes. And I'm wondering, how are you going to roll back some of the overreach of the previous administration in Utah and Washington and Maine?
Yeah, if you're thanks, Jack. And if you're talking about the expansion through the Antiquities Act that President Obama had exercised, that is a presidential authority that is granted. we'd always encouraged, as we did with Chimney Rock as an example in southwest Colorado, we were able to pass legislatively with broad bipartisan support measure to be able to designate Chimney Rock as a national monument. Passed that through the House of Representatives.
May I interrupt, Senator?
Yes, sir. And
Sir?
Congressman, actually.
I'm sorry, Congressman.
Yep.
I understand designated some historical or even archaeological sites to be protected, but to actually usurp millions of acres of land for one small area is outside of what should be allowed for a presidential historical sites thing. I think the states should be able to designate which areas are historical, architecturally protected, and that stuff, not a president.
Well, I believe Congress has an actual role, and this is actually, I believe, constitutionally, a role to be able to play in terms of dealing with these designations that go on, and something that I will advocate for, to have Congress actually have a role to really be able to play in that. With the Antiquities Act, strong argument for it early on in the country when we go back to Teddy Roosevelt. Before we had the BLM, the Forest Service, had management policies that were going to be put into place to be able to protect some areas. This is where the Antiquities Act did play a role. I'm going to be a strong advocate to be able to get Congress back into that mix. Opportunity for our local people then, through Congress's action, to be able to play an actual role in terms of some of that management end of it. So appreciate your point, Jack, and thanks for taking the time to be on the call.
And we want to thank all of you for joining us this evening for this live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Tipton. As a reminder, if you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. If you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. We're going to go to Kim in Creed for the next question.
Hi, Kim.
Good evening, Senator. I have a question about the Affordable Health Care Act, which I would like very much to see repealed, because I saw my own, as a self-employed and contract employee, I saw my costs for my health care escalate. I saw my premiums more than double, and my deductible go up to a point that between the premiums and the if I actually had to use it, the deductible, it was going to be more than I made in a year. And so I want very much to see the Affordable Health Care Act go away, and I'd like to know what you're doing to make sure that happens. And then I didn't want to pull a fast one, but I thought of another question right after they asked me who I was and whatnot. In Creed, we're looking at building requirements that have been imposed, I guess, that were from Boulder County that make absolutely no sense where we are, that have caused the cost of building a home to go through the ceiling, particularly designs for septic systems and things that it makes no sense to apply those where they're being applied. And I'd love to know what can be done to make those nonsensical regulations disappear so we can get back to affordable building costs in some of these rural communities.
Well, Kim, thanks for taking the time to be on the call here this evening. Going back, and I think it's visiting with Deborah and George, who are on the call here out of Grand Junction and Pueblo, and you're out of Creed. We're hearing concern on the Affordable Care Act, and again, the common ground I think that we all have goes to the heart of exactly what you were saying: affordability and then accessibility to healthcare. And for many of us in rural Colorado, has fallen far short. And I think it is worthy of note that in 14 of our counties now in the state of Colorado, there is only one provider That is not choice. We just heard a report here a few weeks ago of Humana pulling out of the Affordable Care Act exchanges in 2018 and saying, and this was one of the insurance companies saying it was in a death spiral. And that's under existing law. That wasn't with any new law or proposed law, under existing law that was there. We're going to be moving to make sure that we've got actual competition in the marketplace and to be able to give you the freedom to be able to make the choices that are going to best suit your family, to be able to incentivize private medical health care savings accounts, to be able to have that competition across state lines and for groups to be able to form, to be able to negotiate lower rates. I think as Americans, irrespective of party, we do have that common ground of wanting affordability and accessibility when it does come to health care. It's going to be important. And in fact, when we're talking about it, we're working obviously on that repeal right now, and we are going to try and make sure that we're doing all possible to be able to fix the damage that the Affordable Care Act has caused in many of our rural areas in the state of Colorado and across the country, to where we've been challenged with higher premiums than our urban counterparts, and that accessibility issue is obviously very significant for us just in terms of direct access. On the second point that you're bringing up in regards to building requirements, you stated out of Boulder County, that's probably more of a zoning issue, certainly not a federal government issue for CREED, and those are some of the folks I visit with county commissioners and people on the Zoning and Planning Board in regards to those issues. So, Kim, thanks again for taking time to be on the call.
And we want to thank all of you for joining us this evening for this live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And if you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. And if you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. And we do want to thank everybody for your patience as we try to get through as many of these questions as possible within the hour time frame. For our next question, we're going to go to Mandy in Delta.
Hi, Mandy.
Hi, Congressman. I am a physician in Delta County, and I admit that I have not read all 106 pages of the Replacement Act yet, but I have read the summaries from nonpartisan websites like the Insurance Journal, and I have some concerns. One of the concerns that I have is that, yes, while we have seen some problems with insurance costs rising, and yes, we have seen some insurance providers pulling out, we also have some cases where we have been showing in court that they are lying about why they're pulling out. So I guess I have some concerns about what is in this new law and how that's actually, I think, going to hurt, not help the problems that we have. I'm the first person to tell you the ACA isn't perfect, but here are my concerns. The HSAs, while those have a lot of benefits for people who make usually somewhere over $200,000 a year, they really don't have as many tax benefits, and they really are very difficult to manage for people who are lower income or who are less educated in the healthcare system. I had an HSA, and I'm a physician, and I found it very difficult to actually navigate that system. So for me to believe that my patients are going to be able to navigate that well seems a bit far-fetched to me. And then as I read this new act, I see a lot of tax cuts, but I see no cost cutting other than cutting Medicaid. What it seems to me is that we're cutting taxes for wealthy individuals and for wealthy providers and for wealthy drug companies while giving no benefit back to our people who may not be wealthy themselves. And tax cuts based on age, you've mentioned it yourself. We pay more for our health insurance in rural areas because it costs more to provide health care in rural areas. if we're going to give the same tax cuts to people in New York City and to Aspen as we are to Delta County, doesn't that seem a little unfair?
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I was taking a couple of notes here, Mandy, as you were going through that I'll be happy to pass on, and we can certainly get some clarification for your issues. I'd love to be able to follow up maybe with you. If you contact us to where you said insurance companies have pulled out, and you'd cited some independent, nonpartisan groups for different reasons out of the I'd like to be able to know that information. I'm personally not aware of that. I've got a little different slant, I guess, than you do on the healthcare savings accounts, and we're both looking at the legislation. It's going to obviously change over the course of what they label as the markup, which is just started today in terms of amendments that are going to be put on. But with the healthcare savings accounts, the proposal, as I understand it, that was coming out of the template that was put forward by Republican leadership was to be with pre-tax dollars. So that's a real benefit, obviously, to lower-income Americans. It's also an incentive for small business people. As a small business owner, former small business owner, that's something that would have been very appealing to me to be able to provide benefit for the people that I work with in my business. When we're talking about actual accessibility and expense in terms of health care, there are ways that we can actually probably be striving to be able to incentivize it. We've got some great examples really in our district in terms of St. Mary's with some of the telemedicine, to be able to look at those opportunities, still costs associated with that, and that gets back into the insurance and the competitiveness of that. With only the three choices that were under the Affordable Care Act that the federal government lined out, the federal government chose, and as you had cited, you're a physician. You may or may not be in the required program for patients that you've been able to deal with. You're going to be the best one to obviously speak to that in the rural areas. These are all the challenges that we were hearing throughout our congressional district, and the affordability was probably the number one issue in terms of those health care premiums and the deductibles that were there, which were really impacting a lot of our working people that simply could not afford to be able to pay the high deductibles that were in place. That's, again, going back to the health care savings accounts. Those are the ideas behind it. We, like you, we're going to be monitoring what is going through the Ways and Means Committee and the Energy and Commerce Committee as they're marking up that legislation. I appreciate your thoughts and continue to stay in contact with us, as I know you probably will, to be able to share your ideas, because the goal I think that we all do have is affordability and accessibility, and the reality for the people, most people in the 3rd Congressional District, that promise was not being fulfilled. And that's where it's important that we start to be able to actually address that.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for this live teletown hall meeting. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. Or if you would like to receive an email update from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing on behalf of the 3rd Congressional District, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. For our next question, we're going to go to Rob in Carbondale.
Hi, Bob.
Hi there. How are you doing, Congressman? Thank you very much
well.
for having this town hall meeting. I appreciate your initiative here. I have a question that I think would be of concern to folks here in the West, and that is this, is that with the greater amount of wildfires that we're seeing here in the West, a huge percentage, the majority it seems, of the Forest Service budget gets diverted to fighting these wildfires. And what that does is that leaves our Forest Service staff and offices here in the West unable to really meet recreation demands, logging demands, other resource demands upon the forest, because there's not people and cash to administer that. And I'm wondering, with our newfound plans for austerity in through the Trump administration, what can you do and what do you plan to do to counter this action? Because the national forest system is so important to us both here in Colorado and around the West.
Yeah. And Bob, I appreciate that question. We've introduced our legislation, passed it through the House of Representatives with bipartisan support. The Healthy Forest Management and Wildfire Act, which we're going to be reintroducing into this Congress as well, to be able to get our county commissioners, our governor, working with the Forest Service, identifying areas of imminent threat, to be able to direct a lot of the attention that they have to be able to treat those areas. Was also supportive in the last Congress, and I know we'll be bringing that back up again in this Congress in regards to FEMA, to be able to have these treated as a national disaster, to be able to actually get in and have those resources available. You and I probably share a common goal on this. I think that we need to be being proactive rather than reactive, because we will spend the money. It happened to be at the West Fork Complex fire down on Wolf Creek when actually driving over Wolf Creek to the Incident Command Center in Pagosa Springs when the Papoose fire portion of that blew up. A lot of expense is spent fighting a fire. We need to be directing some of those resources in to being proactive, to be able to do some of that thinning, to address some of the downed and standing dead timber, which is a tinderbox ready to go with a lightning strike. And we're going to continue to advocate for those areas because, as you had cited there in terms of being able to deal with it, if a forest fire does break out, we will spend the money to fight it. It'd be better spent money to be able to make sure that we're being proactive, in my opinion, to make sure that we're creating actual healthy forests, which will mitigate some of the damage that we do see from wildfire.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
And thank you all for joining us this evening. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And just a reminder, if you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. Or if you would like to receive periodic email updates from the Congressman on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. For our next question, we're going to go to John in Ignacio.
Hi, John.
Hello, Congressman Tipton. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to hear everybody, the questions I've heard so far, I hear nothing about all the military kids stationed overseas. One quick question to you. When will the war on terror be over?
You know, John, I wish I could answer that question, and I'm not sure any of us can answer it. I think you and I and everybody on this call, we join together in thanking our men and women in the United States military that are willing to fight for our freedoms and to be able to protect us. This is going to be an ongoing challenge that we need to obviously make sure that our men and women in the United States military have the proper equipment and resources. We just had a defense authorization bill that we voted on today to be able to try and address some of those real issues that we're really facing. Had an opportunity to be able to interact with some German members of the Bundestag that are also very interested in making sure that we're being cooperative through NATO to be able to address the ongoing threat that we are seeing out of terrorism and the challenges that we face there. But as I know you know, no one's going to be able to give you the answer on that, but we do need to stay vigilant. We do need to stay determined to be able to protect our country, our people, our interests. And again, our thanks to the men and women of the United States military for their willingness to serve.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. As a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please press 0 on your phone keypad. Or if you would like to sign up for periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton, please press 7. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. We're going to move right along to our next question. We're going to go to Bob in Aspen.
Hi, Bob.
Yes, Congressman. I've been wondering, do you still support selling health insurance across state lines? I bring this to your attention because some years ago the McCarran-Ferguson Act was passed and signed by the President, which said the business of insurance will be under the purview of the states. Now, if we start selling it across state lines, then our Colorado Department of Commissioner of Insurance will not be able to control it. It'll be controlled by Washington, D.C., because then it will be in interstate commerce. I'm wondering if you still support selling it across state lines.
I do support being able to have that competition across state lines. Certainly aware of the McCarran-Ferguson Act of 1945 in regards to the antitrust laws that were put into place. And we see some of the challenges, with the broader pools in terms of being able to sell across those state lines and then being able to sculpt different types of insurance policies, which is what I think is going to be important to meet individual needs for individual consumers is something that I see ultimately as a benefit to be able to address the affordability of health care costs and for people to be able to make the choices that best suit their particular circumstances. There is a piece of legislation that Paul Gosar is just introducing out of Arizona that we're going to be co-sponsoring to be able to address the McCarran-Ferguson Act of 45. It's called the Competitive Health Care Reform Act of 2017. It's H.R. 375, if I recall correctly. This is to be able to create that competition in the marketplace to help drive affordability for consumers and to be able to meet their own needs. The minimum standards, by the way, can be set by the states in terms of the health care, and so we aren't eliminating those states' rights to be able to set some of those minimum health care standards, but to be able to open the door to competition and to be able to create a real marketplace for it. So thanks, Bob, for the question.
And thanks, everybody, for joining us this evening for this live Teletown Hall meeting, and thank you for your patience. If you're currently waiting to ask a question, we're going to try to get through as many of these as possible before the 1-hour time frame expires. We're just going to go ahead and jump to our next question here. We're going to go to Jeremy in Rifle.
Hey, Jeremy.
Thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for taking the time to get a hold of me. So
yes,
I have
sir.
a question. I am a school bus driver in a small town. I was wondering, is there an act in place or is there going to be any sort of, can we get something started to educate children in school about school bus safety, the etiquette, and the results of an accident? None of the students I have on my bus are educated in safety at all on school buses, and the community also needs some education. I mean, they run the stop signs when the kids cross the streets, and they don't understand why the stop signs are there. So I was wondering, is there an act in place, or is there going to be an act to start educating kids in school about school bus safety?
Yeah, Jeremy, and I think you bring up an important point, and strongly have advocated for local control in our schools, and with our local school boards, being able to deal with our teachers and administrators as well for that type of education. I think starting at the elementary school level, if it can take a few moments in a school day to be able to help drive that, I think that is important. And thanks for what you are doing as well. You're transporting some of the most important things in any parent's life, and that's their children with the school buses. So I think probably going down and visiting with the school administrators, local teachers, and then parent-teachers organizations, school board as well, is going to be the best avenue to try and get that awareness done at the local level and to be able to raise the importance of the job that you have and make sure that we're getting safety needs in place and our children are paying attention to it. So, Jeremy, appreciate what you do.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening, and thank you for staying on and being patient as we get through as many of these questions as possible. If you do want to ask a question, please press 0 on your phone keypad, or if you want to sign up for the free e-newsletter to receive regular updates from Congressman Tipton, please press 7. With that, we're going to go to our next question, and that is Hanson in Fruita.
Hi, Hanson.
Hey, actually it's Jay. They got something else there, but anyway, I'm a former coal miner, and the last 8 years I've seen a lot of regulation and a lot of things happening to the coal mines and being shut down. A lot of our crews that used to work in there basically out of jobs. They've lost their insurance, they've lost everything, and 90% of that was because of overregulation and because of outsourcing and just different things happening. Being replaced by people that would take about half the wage that had some kind of a classroom education, where the rest of us, we had to earn everything. Of course, we had to get our college for going to the coal mine and, training and all that kind of stuff. So, I guess basically my question is, is there anything in order, hopefully in the near future, to kind of bring that back, or is that something that's just pretty much gone and not going to be able to keep that?
Certainly appreciate your question, and we've certainly seen in Colorado and certainly in our district some of the impacts on regulation on good-paying coal jobs. I've often cited, if you want to be able to see blue skies in a coal-fired power plant, travel with me to Craig, Colorado. And, as we've seen some of the requirements for the transition over into gas-fired power plants, are you going to have those reconvert back? The practical answer is no. Just in terms of some of the costs that are going to be associated with that. We have had a couple of CRAs to make sure that we're not being punitive in terms of the coal industry, because we do have one thing that hasn't often been pointed to are advances in technology to be able to use coal and to be able to use that as a primary generation source, as it has been in terms of the main supply source for the country in many cases. And we've had a lot of challenges, as you know, in our district from the Colawile mine to several of the coal companies that had filed bankruptcy because of some of the policies in the previous administration. I've introduced legislation, and it's called Planning for America's Energy Future Act, and it literally does call for all of the above. And starts out with wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, oil, gas, oil shale, coal, or minerals. Nobody in the world will develop resources more responsibly than we will here in our country. Coal does have to be a part of that, all of the above mix for American energy security. And as we look into the communities of Craig down into Delta, our coal miners and those families that are trying to be able to put food on the table for their children and a roof over their head, these are important jobs that are not easily replaced. And I believe using that as part of the all-above portfolio as well is an important step for American energy security and also for some economic security in some of our communities which are really struggling. We did have through some of the congressional review acts that we brought up at the very beginning of this call, we'd had the stream protection rule regulation reform to be able to grow the economy. And again, I think our legislation for all of the above in terms of the Planning for America's Energy Future Act are some positive steps in the right direction.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to have time for about one or two more questions here. So if you're still waiting on the line and we do get to the end of the call and you wanted to ask a question, please stay on and leave a message, and we will be able to get that message and have a member of this office give you a call and get you an answer to your question. For our next question, we're going to go to John in Durango.
Hi, John.
Yeah, good evening. My question is about the budget and the national debts. I'd like to know what you and Michael Bennett and Corey Gardner can do. I'm concerned for my son and grandchildren about what they're going to inherit and how you can stop it. With all, I just see the national debt escalating exponentially with all the proposals, and I'm concerned. We need infrastructure, but when we spend 9 times more than the Russians on defense and 3 times more than the Chinese, how can we justify increasing defense spending 10%?
Well, John, we share common ground in terms of the budget and the national debt. As you know, right now it's approaching $20 trillion, and that's just the official number. In terms of some of the unfunded liabilities that are out there, that grows a lot more in terms of what our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren are going to be inheriting. And we haven't repealed, as you note, the laws of economics. Bills will have to be paid. And a couple of approaches that we're going to have to be taking a look at in terms of making sure that we're looking at programs and the dollars that we're spending, are they yielding the results that we want to be able to have? And using that matrix as opposed to putting more money in if it isn't working to make sure that we're actually spending those resources rightly. One of the tools that has not been often talked about over the last few years in terms of being able to reduce that national debt and deficit on the yearly basis that we're dealing with. It's literally getting the economy moving and being able to get people back to work. As you're probably aware, we've had one of the most lethargic growth rates in GDP since the Great Depression. We've got the lowest labor participation rate right now in 4 decades in this country. For the first time since we've been keeping records, we've had more small businesses that are shutting down than there are new business startups. We get the economy moving, but then it also takes responsibility out of Congress in terms of how those dollars are going to be spent. And I can probably see it a lot of our people right now saying we'd like to be able to see that. We should have that common value in terms of making sure that those resources that are limited are going to be spent wisely, and that we're looking out not only for the needs of our current generations, but the generations that are going to be following us. This is one of the challenges that we have as we've seen federal spending explode over the last few years. That has charged up the card against our children and our grandchildren, and it's going to take us looking at programs and, again, using the actual matrix of are we being successful? Are there better ways to be able to address things that as Americans we're going to have to sit down and take a look at? And, again, one of the best solutions that we have for current needs to help future generations is also to create an environment to where we're encouraging employment and job creation in this country and driving prosperity as well.
And we have come to the end of our allotted time for this evening's Teletown Hall meeting. For those of you who were waiting to ask a question and did not get a chance, please stay on the line at the conclusion of this call, and you will be able to leave a message with your comment or question that will be listened to by Congressman Tipton, and you will get a response from the office in the next few days here. So, again, please stay on the line and leave your comment or question, and we will get back to you. With that, we will go back to Congressman Tipton for a couple of closing remarks.
Well, thanks, Josh, and again, thank all of you for taking the time to join us. We had great coverage here from Telluride to Krieg to Junction to Pueblo, Delta, Carbondale, Ignacio, Aspen, across the 3rd Congressional District, and appreciate all of you taking your time, sharing some of your thoughts, and asking questions in terms of some of the issues that we're working on here in Washington. One thing that is important for us, we do have offices in Grand Junction, Alamosa, in Durango, and in Pueblo. We do want to be able to hear from you and your thoughts and ideas as well. As many of you know, as we've visited over the course of time, some of our best ideas obviously come from home, to where we're feeling impacts for good or ill in terms of government actions, and do appreciate your contacting us to be able to share those views. And again, thank you for taking some of your evening to be able to share this time with us, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much.